So you saw my blog post kind of analyzing your Kickstarter campaign right when it came out, and you were looking at the comments, and you reached out to me. So what are your first thoughts kind of thinking about that?
Well, just to be clear, I saw it today. Someone
Yep.
sent me a link to it, and I was first surprised and delighted at the richness of your analysis and you weren't grandstanding. You were looking deeply into what I was trying to do. I thought it was helpful to your readers. It was sort of blogging at its best, and that's why I read it, because it was so useful. I broke my rule and scanned down a little bit and read some of the comments, and some of them were very interesting because sometimes you hear from people things that they want to believe, their conclusions that fly in the face of what you just said. And, I don't think that people are calling me or anyone else a liar when they say that, but we've been trained by our marketing culture to believe that there's always some sort of subtext to what's going on, and it's our job to suss it out. So I thought, hey, why don't I just connect with Dan and we can talk it through? And I thought your analysis was great, but now it's many months later and I can fill you in.
So, when you first framed this, part of the way you framed the messaging was this idea of proving a point to your publisher about the value of books. What was the start of that? Because that was really interesting to me, the idea of there's an us versus them type of thing of why you want to support it, but why that particular issue? Was it a real problem for you in publishing the book?
Well, let's understand a couple of things. First of all, there's no question that, like many authors who have had success, I don't need the cash from a Kickstarter to make a book go into the world. But with ebooks, no one needs the cash from a Kickstarter to put in a book in the world. No one. You go into Microsoft Word, you export, you send it to wherever you send it to, and suddenly 2 days later, you're in the ebook store. So we've eliminated the cash component here. I was trying to make a point that said, publishing has never been about printing. And the cost of actually making a few copies of a book, print on demand or ebook or regular books, is trivial compared to the scarcity mindset that bookstores have very scarce resources. The average bookstore holds 50,000, 60,000 books, and they publish 100,000 books a year. So that means you got to get rid of Catcher in the Rye, you got to get rid of Catch-22, you got to get rid of all the classics, and you can still only put half the books that have come out, only one of each. So the scarcity mindset is critical. So at the bookstore level, bookstores have never really supported my work, and there's a few reasons for that. One reason is that you don't start a bookstore because you want to sell more copies of a book by me. You start a bookstore because you want to sell literature. You want to sell books that people care about. Number two is you have to understand that when you're running a bookstore, is there an upside for you in promoting it? Meaning, does more promotion lead to more sales? And we know for a fact that that's true with diet books. We know for a fact that that's true with pop fiction, that a giant stack at the bookstore sells more copies. But in the business aisle, that's rarely been true. And so if you believe, as an author does, that more promotion is going to lead to more sales, you got to do something to get the Barnes and Nobles of the world to sit up and say, yeah, I'm going to promote this. I know I could get it out there. I know I can get it in Amazon. I know certain Barnes and Nobles will carry 3 copies. But if you go to Barnes and Noble today, before the end of the month, you'll see dozens of my books in big stacks, new ones and old ones, only because I did this Kickstarter.
Really? Okay.
That sent a message to Barnes and Noble. There's no question about it. They've told us that.
So was it that it was sending a message that the book industry was hearing, or was it also with just the budget that your publisher would spend as they physically put more of an effort than they would have if this had not worked so well?
Which leads to the second part, which is, here's the hard part of publishing. It's not printing, as I said. It's selling the first 10,000 copies. The first 10,000 copies is how you get something going, how you get it uphill. It's really hard to actually sell 10,000 copies of a book. But after that, if you just don't get in the way, that's your job, because either the book's going to spread or it's not, right? So if we look at 50 Shades of Grey, got to tell you, Random House isn't why 50 Shades of Grey was successful. 50 Shades of Grey was successful because some book had to be the book of the year, and randomly, through a whole bunch of obvious and non-obvious circumstances, it sold its first 10,000. And from that, then Random House showed up, picked it up, and said, now we know how to mechanically get this thing out there. So there's no doubt in my mind that Little Brown or Penguin would have said, sure, we'll publish your book. But would they have said, we'll publish your book because we think it's got this enormous amount of energy behind it? Because the giant risk is in reading a manuscript and then coming to the conclusion that this book's going to go. And publishers get it wrong as often as they get it right. So what I was saying, not on my behalf, but on behalf of every author, is if you can build a following, it's only 5,000 people. 5,000 people who like you and trust you enough to sign on the first day before they read it, to say, I'm in, and I'm going to share this with my friends, then the publishing world will take note. And basically, I am calling bullshit on the unpublished author or the semi-published author who thinks there's a conspiracy keeping them out of the publishing world. When actually what you need to do is the hard work day by day by day. And I would put your blog on this list of building a group of people who trust you and want to support you when it's time. And so I can say that. I could have just written this down in a blog post. But instead, I committed half a year of my life to proving that this point was true. That's why I did it. I actually lost money on the Kickstarter. I spent every penny I made plus extra. The shipping alone cost me over $100,000 because I wanted to do it right. You don't make money from your core tribe. You serve them. And if you serve them well, you will make money from other people.
So you said we're 8 months out from the Kickstarter launching. What are the takeaways that you have of what worked beyond your expectations and what you would change if you did it next time or if you were advising another author like yourself to do it next time?
Well, the biggest piece of advice is make sure you have a staff because it's logistically a real pain in the neck. But
you were part of what you're offering was a book that was enormous and other books around that.
Yeah, did you get a copy of the big book?
I did not.
All right, I'll show it to you. Hold on one second. Okay, so when I said make a book by hand, I meant make a book by hand. And this book, which we built in about 100 days, every single page has a different layout. It's 375,000 words that I created. There we go. See that? Yep. And you can kill a small animal with it, right? The point is that building this was thrilling because I wasn't doing it for anonymous people. I was doing it for people who had already signed up for it. So it's about writing for your readers as opposed to finding readers for your writing, which is totally upside down for most people in the book business. And so this opening this door and being able to say to people, let's connect together and then I'll go away and write something for you was really eye-opening for me. And I like doing things differently because it keeps it fresh and makes it, this might not work, which is the title of the book, if you look on the back, right? Because I was trying to do something that might not work. Now, you mentioned the no-brainer option. Let me explain something about this. I've heard from thousands of the people who signed up for the Kickstarter because they're not shy about connecting with me on Kickstarter. Every single person who signed up for the $111 thing is glad they did because they got this thing that's not for sale and all this other stuff, right? And the people who ignored me and didn't trust and bought the $4 thing or the $20 thing are like, how can I get one of those? And you can't because the deal's a deal, right? And so I didn't call it the no-brainer option as some clever way of upselling people to $111. I did it because I didn't want those people to complain later if they didn't sign up for it, right? My whole life is about not getting people to complain. And, you know, I'm trying to delight, but you can't delight and create this scarcity without having some people feel like they didn't get to be part of it, right? So I get that the vast majority of humans on planet Earth don't want to read any of my books. And they certainly don't want to read a book that weighs 17 pounds. But I didn't do this for the vast majority of people on Earth. I did it for this tiny sliver of people that wanted to play along. So the people who didn't get the joke, the people who thought I didn't belong on Kickstarter, the people who said, I'll just wait to buy the book later, that's fine. It wasn't for them. And that shift in mindset is another thing that marketers have to get their arms around, which is the days of marketing something to everyone are over, unless you're Lady Gaga or Coca-Cola. But for the rest of us, we need to market to someone. And everyone, they might not get in on it, which is fine. Because again, it's not about maximization. It's about organizing and amplifying people.
So when you look at this, when you look at an author who's not yet have a big enough platform, not have an established audience, are you thinking Kickstarter is something that you might want to wait on, or is it just experimental in every sense of the form?
There's no question you should wait on that, right? That what I am arguing over and over and over again is that it took me 10 years to be an overnight success. And that we see the people over there who are getting to do the happy dance at the end of the 10 years. And so people rush over and they say, wow, this guy on Twitter has 3 million followers, so I'll go build a Twitter feed because then I'll have 3 million followers. But that's not how it works, right? The way it works is you do something with and for 10 people. And if it's good, they'll tell 10 people. Now you have 100. And then you have 1,000, and then you have 5,000. But if you start doing, if you're dreaming of being on Letterman, if you're imagining being on the end cap at Walmart, if you just can't wait till someone links to you from, their big blog or Twitter feed, you're going to waste every single day. That the magic of the internet is not that we invented a replacement for TV advertising that happens to be free. That's not what it is. What we've done is given people this tiny little asset, which is they can connect to a small number of people, and maybe those people will connect to someone else. And what I like the most about the post you wrote is that part of it you got of what I was saying, right? And the thing that I never did was I never set out and said, how can I use this to maximize revenue? Because I know how to maximize revenue, and Kickstarter is a dumb way to do that.
I appreciate I want to be respectful of your time. You said you had 20 minutes. We're at that point.
Still setting up his stuff. Go ahead.
So will you be using Kickstarter again? Has this given you other ideas about how to focus like that?
I'm really good at getting myself out of a hole I've just dug myself. Like, oh, there's these thousands of people waiting for 4 books you haven't written yet. Better get to it. I'm really bad at doing something for the second time. Because when I do it for the second time, it's like, okay, I get that, but why am I doing this? My goal here is that 100 people or 1,000 people will figure out a better tool than Kickstarter, will figure out a better way to organize their readers, will copy part of what I did and do better on the other part. So my agenda right now does not involve writing anything on paper because I'm tired. I just have all the stuff I wrote. But mostly it's about exploring different ways that people connect and then what to do with it.
You had one option that was so intriguing to me. It was the option to speak with you, have your story told by you, and be featured in a book. That seemed unusual for me, for you to offer in that way. Do you regret doing that? It was just something that I think, from what I heard, is sold out almost immediately. I'm not sure if it was seeded to anyone or if it was just people saw that and knew what it was right away.
Okay, so the quick background on Kickstarter is supposed to be a philanthropic opportunity for people who can't afford to sponsor Carnegie Hall, right? That it was for a way to put up 5, 10, 20 bucks for an artist you care about. Instantly, because human beings are selfish, that's not what it became. What Kickstarter is for almost everyone is a store, right? It's a store where there's a little risk, you buy stuff in advance, but you buy stuff you can't get anywhere else. And so when people go to Kickstarter, they quickly scan down the prizes, and they're buying the prize. They're not saying, I'd like to give $200 to this, what prize should I take? They're saying, no, that prize, yeah, it's worth 200 bucks, I'll take it. And that's why there needs to be 10 or 11 different levels, because basically you're stocking a store with prizes. And as I was creating this, the lower level prizes were easy for me to envision how the whole thing would go down. But if you study the power law and Zipf's curve and all that stuff, you see that a lot of the upside, and I needed the upside to pay for all my expenses, was the premier stuff at the top. But I didn't want, as you pointed out, I could have said, I'll run a seminar. Well, the reason I didn't want to do that is I know how to run a seminar. I know how to sell tickets. Kickstarter is not a good way to do that. And I don't work for Kickstarter. So my goal wasn't how high can I make this number go. You'll notice, which some people didn't because they weren't paying attention, every single one of the levels was limited, right? That was dumb from a marketing maximization point of view, because if a lot of people want something, sell more of it, right? Like running the printing press for more of this while it's going, why not? But I intentionally kept it limited because I was trying to make it clear I wasn't trying to maximize how much money came in. I was trying to make a point. So to answer your question, I struggled with what could I put at the highest level that felt special, that made sense to be limited, but that wasn't this craven attempt to sell out. So it seemed to me that since the Icarus Deception is about anyone can be an artist if they choose to be human, if they choose to do work that matters, I said, all right, great. Anyone can be an artist. Let me let people sign up and I will interview them until I find a part of what they do that's worthy of being in my book. So it's not an ad. It's actually, oh yeah, I see how you got from here to here. In that moment in your career, that's when you were doing art. That's when you were coloring outside the lines. And so if you read the book, there's 11 or so people at the end. It's hard to tell which are the 5 that paid to be in it because I found their art and I talked about it. So I was comfortable with that. The next level, the one you also talked about, was the silly level where I offered them a signed copy of Shakespeare's Folio signed by me. And the reason that I took it off the list is some people viewed that as an opportunity to start negotiating with me about what I would have to do for them to get me $10,000. And I'm not for sale. And I wasn't going to start playing with that. And so, because it was unsold for good reason. It was stupid to spend $10,000 for this. And I didn't like the fact that that unsold spot made people feel like there was an invitation to start dickering with me about what it would take to sell it because they didn't get the joke. And so if I'm telling a joke and people who mean well aren't getting it, better to just stop telling the joke. So I took it down.
All right, I appreciate your time and taking me through this. It helps clarify. And at the end, it was a $287,342 message in a lot of ways. That is powerful to see that number there, even though what you're saying is it's bigger than that.
Yeah, and again, I don't think you should change your post. Your post should stay the way it is because it's right on and very insightful. I just thought, we'd have a conversation about what happens after that because I hope that, and I don't think Kickstarter, by the way, is the end. I think there are going to be other platforms that are more artist friendly and easier to use in the long run and are more consistent in their operation that either Kickstarter will become or others will become that. The same way Friendster isn't around, but other things figured out how to touch those buttons. But mostly what I want your readers to understand is knowing that this is going to be more prevalent 3 years from now. Start today to build the platform so that 3 years from now, you'll be able to use it.
I appreciate your taking me through this and reaching out and sharing all that. Really do.
Thanks. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you, Seth. Have a great day.